For as long as people have been fighting wars, there have been stories of heroes who faced seemingly impossible odds and won. In this episode, we're going to look at one of the most famous of these stories, that of David and Goliath. But why do we tell this story? What is it about the story of David and Goliath that has made it so popular across cultures and throughout history? To answer that question, we need to talk about Joseph Campbell. Campbell was an American professor of literature who in 1949 wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. In the book, he described what he referred to as the monomyth, or the hero's journey. He argued that most stories follow the same basic structure, and that the reason they are so popular is because they reflect important truths about the human experience. The monomyth or hero's journey consists of three main parts: the separation, where the hero is called to adventure; the initiation, where the hero faces trials and tribulations; and the return, where the hero returns home, transformed by their experiences. The story of David and Goliath follows this structure almost perfectly. In the separation, we are introduced to David, a young boy from Bethlehem, who tends his father's sheep. One day, while David is tending his sheep, he hears the Israelites and their enemies, the Philistines, preparing for battle, and the Philistines come up against Israel's champion, a giant named Goliath. Day after day, Goliath taunts the Israelites and challenges them to send out a champion to fight him, but no one is willing to fight Goliath until David volunteers. This is the call to adventure. David leaves his home and his flock and goes to meet the Philistines. Now, in the initiation, David faces many obstacles. He is just a young boy up against a grown man, a shepherd up against a warrior, and he has nothing but a sling and some stones, while Goliath is armed with armor and weapons. But David is confident in his ability and in his faith in God. He refuses to use Goliath's armor because he says it doesn't fit him. And instead, he uses his sling to fire a stone into Goliath's forehead, killing him. With the giant slain, the Philistines flee, and the Israelites win the battle. Finally, in the return, we see that the people of Israel rejoice at their victory over the Philistines. And David becomes a hero, not just of Israel, but of all the people. So we see that the story of David and Goliath follows the monomyth, and that this story is so popular because it reflects important truths about the human experience. But there's more to the story than that. The story of David and Goliath is also popular because it is a story of courage. David is a young boy who is afraid, but he is willing to face his fears to protect his people. It is a story of faith. David believes in God and in his own abilities, and that gives him the strength to defeat Goliath. It is a story of humility. David is a humble young man who does not boast or brag, and that makes him all the more relatable to us as readers. Finally, it is a story of hope. David is a small fish in a big pond, but he never gives up. He believes that he can defeat Goliath, and in the end he does. Another reason that the story of David and Goliath is so popular is because it is a story of empowerment. It is a story that shows us that we can overcome any obstacle if we have the courage, faith, and humility to try. It is a story that tells us that we should never give up, that we should always believe in ourselves, and that we should never lose hope. Now, when we look at the story through the lens of the hero's journey, we can see that it is not just a story of a young boy who defeated a giant. It is a story of courage, faith, humility, and hope. It is a story that teaches us important lessons about life and about ourselves. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, a story that you would like us to cover in the future. We would love to hear from you. And if you are interested in learning more about the hero's journey, I highly recommend reading Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It is a fascinating read, and it will help you to see all of the stories in a new light. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep believing in the power of stories. It is well known that there are a variety of versions of the story of David and Goliath. In fact, there are so many versions that it is impossible to know which one came first or which one is the most accurate. However, there are some common elements in all of the tellings of the story. In every telling, we have a hero named David who is a young shepherd. He is a shepherd who lives in a small village and spends his days tending his father's sheep. One day, while David is tending his flock, he hears that the Israelites are at war with their enemies, the Philistines. And every day the Philistines come up against the Israelites and challenge them to send out a champion to fight them. But the Israelites are afraid to fight the Philistines because the Philistines are a powerful and experienced fighting force. However, one day a giant named Goliath comes up against the Israelites and taunts them to send out a champion to fight him. And Goliath is a huge man, over 6 feet tall, with a helmet made of bronze and armor made of iron. He also carries a spear that is over 5 feet long, and a shield that is over 3 feet wide. So naturally, the Israelites are terrified of Goliath, and no one is willing to fight him until David steps forward. David is a brave soul who is not afraid of Goliath. And when he hears Goliath's taunts, he is outraged at the way that the giant is treating the Israelites. So he volunteers to fight Goliath. And even though David is just a young shepherd and Goliath is a giant warrior, David is confident that he can win the fight. In fact, David says that he has fought off lions and bears to protect his sheep, and that he will do the same thing to protect his people. So the Israelites agree to let David fight Goliath, and the two warriors meet up on the battlefield. And when they meet, there is a fierce battle between them. Goliath swings his spear at David, but David dodges it and returns the favor by throwing a stone at Goliath's head. And the stone hits Goliath squarely in the forehead and knocks him out. And when the giant falls to the ground, David runs up to him and cuts off his head with Goliath's own sword. And that is the end of the battle. The Israelites win, and David is celebrated as a hero. So those are some of the common elements in the story of David and Goliath. There are obviously many variations on this tale, but no matter how the story is told, there are some things that remain constant. For example, David is always a young shepherd who is brave enough to stand up to a giant. Goliath is always a huge, powerful warrior who taunts the Israelites and challenges them to fight him. And the battle between David and Goliath always takes place on a battlefield. There are also some other interesting details that I think are worth pointing out. For example, in every telling of the story, David is a shepherd. Shepherds were traditionally seen as simple country folk, so it is fitting that David is portrayed as a humble and unassuming young man. Shepherds also had to be brave and quick-witted in order to protect their flocks from predators, so it makes sense that David has these qualities as well. Another interesting detail is that Goliath is a giant. Giants are often seen as representing chaos and disorder, so it makes sense that Goliath is the leader of the Philistines, who are the enemies of Israel. Giants are also typically very strong and powerful, which makes Goliath a formidable opponent for David. The setting of the story is also important. The battle between David and Goliath takes place on a battlefield, which is a neutral space between the two opposing armies. This setting emphasizes the one-on-one nature of the conflict between David and Goliath. Overall, the story of David and Goliath is a classic battle between good and evil. David represents good, and Goliath represents evil. And because this story is so timeless, it continues to be relevant today. The story teaches us that no matter how big or powerful our opponents are, we can still defeat them if we are brave, resourceful, and never give up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, comment, a story that you would like us to cover in the future. And if you want to learn more about the Bible, I highly recommend checking out Bible Gateway. I'm sure you'll find something that interests you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.